Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reading Through the Bible. My name is Carl, and today we'll be reading through Mark 8. Okay, well, it is already warm outside. I think everywhere's kind of having this issue, but definitely a lot warmer than it has been. And I went for a walk, and I'm sweating already, so that's always fun. But it's okay. We got the air on inside. So it actually, when you go outside, it makes the inside feel better as opposed to just sitting inside all day and everything. So there's definitely positives involved with it. And I'm, ready to do that. It's a little bit cloudy. It looks kind of like it may rain, but I don't know. I don't think so. It's not supposed to. I'm just, kind of observing and stuff. So clouds in the sky, but they're still white. It's just the sun feels like it's kind of blocked right now. And so, that feeling when it's kind of overcast. And that's kind of what it feels like. And we could certainly do with it cooling off. There was some rain yesterday, but not very much, just a little smattering here and there. So, I last night I spent way too long on YouTube watching shorts, and that's kind of the thing that I default to when I have nothing better to do, to be honest with you. And it's definitely kind of a what would I call it? A sign to me, or something saying, "Hey, you need to start doing stuff." And I mean, to be honest, like I'm not spending 2-3 hours on it, but an hour is still more than enough, and I could be learning some other type of skill, but instead I'm sitting there and let my brain turn into mush. So I actually have kind of made a pact with myself. I prayed about it, and I'm trying to get out and hit 10,000 steps a day. It's funny because you go through these shorts, and a lot of times I'm just skipping through, just trying to find something that's interesting. But you'll get these things every once in a while that kind of stick with you. And one of them was just a guy who was walking, and he's like, "Oh, you got to hit 10,000 steps a day because blah 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 blah." And truthfully, I skipped it after like 4 or 5 seconds. But it stuck with me, and I was thinking, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, something that I should do. And some of the things that he had mentioned within the 4 or 5 seconds, he was like, for brain health and, getting your body moving, stuff like that. If you're plateauing for weight loss. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I've been struggling with that, and, definitely would fix some other things that are going on, for example, and this is what I prayed about, is a lot of times during the day, I'll start out well, I'll go for a walk, I'll lift, I'll get down, I'll sit down here, and I'll start doing my stream. And then after my stream, I'll grab a little bit of food or something to drink and come back down and start, working on applications for jobs or, networking or something like that. And after, an hour or two of that, I start feeling a little bit lethargic, a little bit tired, etc. And then the temptation comes to take a nap. And, because I don't have any work right now, it's like, well, might as well do this while I can, right? Eventually I'll have a job and not be able to nap anymore. So enjoy it while you can. But I think that I need to really flip that on its head and start getting more active. And so I asked God to really help me with that and just be with me and say, hey, every time I start to feel that way, I start to feel tired, lethargic, like, oh, a nap would be good right now. Put on my shoes, go out, take a walk, half-hour walk. Usually that reinvigorates me. I feel better. I feel more sharp. I feel like I've done something, and it helps in all those ways. But I really want God to be involved as well. And so I asked him, like, Lord, be with me when I take these walks. Help turn this around. Help make this a lasting thing. Something that I struggle with is consistency. And thankfully, doing this stream has kind of helped with that. But just in the past, I'll start something, I'll go hard on it for a little bit, and then I'll just kind of be like, that's good enough. I understand where this is going. And I've kind of done that with everything in my life. And so that's something that I really want to work on and definitely needs work. And so I've been praying about it, and hopefully this is something that can kind of help with that and just be like, hey, every time I start to feel tired, go get up, be active, do something. And that's going to be a 180 for me, and kind of not my life's philosophy, but just the way I've built my life has been rest, rest, rest. Take the time when you have it, enjoy your time to yourself. And it's ended up with me being, way too big and, not active enough. And it's become a habit now. And it's really, really difficult to get out of. And so that's one way that I'm going to do something. Actually, right before I started the stream, I was looking for walking treadmills for my desk. And they make really good ones now where you can just put it under your desk and it's just flat. There's no like stand or anything like that. Obviously, that would be on your desk. I wonder how sturdy they are, to be honest with you. And we have a carpet down here, so I don't know how well it would work. I would probably have to get some sort of mat or something, but those shouldn't be too expensive. So it's it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I don't really, we don't have a whole lot of money to spare right now. I mean, these things are a couple $100. They're not too bad, but it's still like not a necessary expenditure. So I hesitate on doing it, but I think it would really help my health because I'm down here so much on the computer. It's like, just walk while you're on the computer. You get 3-4 hours in a day just by doing that, maybe even 6 to 8, depending on the day. And you do that every day and you're, lose weight real fast. So that's something that I'm debating right now. Something that else kind of came up through me watching shorts was, for some reason, right before I went to bed, everything became about religion and God and devil and hell and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, it's time to go to bed before I start like freaking myself out and stuff. And it was actually already a little too late at that point because, they'll sprinkle in these stories with like Joe Rogan, where a guy goes to a Amazon rainforest and he sees somebody get eaten by an anaconda, or he's getting squeezed out and he's almost broken by an anaconda, and then his friends come and save him, and like all this crazy stuff. And like, I don't have any real threat of being eaten by an anaconda, but at the same time, like, you put those thoughts in your head before bed and it's not going to be as easy to sleep. I'm pretty sensitive myself, even though I'm a big guy. And it just, I'd rather not think about that kind of stuff. So back to the story. One comes up where a guy is talking about, his relationship and why he became a Christian and stuff. But he said when he was a young man, he kept seeing the number 1134 everywhere. And he was like, 1134 everywhere when he was a kid. And he's like, what does that mean? And then he wrote it on a piece of paper, turned it upside down. It says hell, right, in lowercase. And so he's talking about one night he went, and I'm very much paraphrasing, this is just what I remember of it. He went to sleep, he had a dream, and he was in this room lit with torches, and this man came up to him and said, I don't know you, or truly I tell you, I don't know you. However Jesus speaks, that was who it was supposed to be. And he pushed his head through the floor, and the guy saw, what he said was things that he, would never want even his worst enemy to see or experience or anything like that. Basically looking down at hell and seeing how awful it was, right? And then he pulled his head back up through the floor right before he stopped his dream, etc. And I guess that's why the guy says he's a Christian now or whatever. And so, thinking about like spiritual things and demons and, stuff like that. And I'm like, man, like they're all around us. We don't see that world. We're not in tune with that world necessarily, but it's, something that could appear at any moment. And you'd be like, you hear about stories like that and you hear, people who've been reached out to like that. And then I started thinking about it as I was lying in bed, and I was like, you know what? That brings up a really good point. And this, I marked this in my head as something to talk about today, because I was like, this is a really important thing. I think that there's a couple facets to this. Number one is Jesus has already defeated evil. So thank God for that. I mean, he is more powerful than the demons, than Lucifer, the devil, and he's already defeated that. And so, we don't have to worry about having to fight and lose in those situations. Because honestly, like that stuff is pretty terrifying, Like it's like a ghost story, like a Hollywood, paranormal movie or whatever, where you have no control over this thing and this ghost just throws you around and does whatever it wants with you, right? And there's no way to fight back. Terrifying. And being in that kind of battle with the spiritual world, right? Physically, like we don't have the tools. We're just not built like that, right? We're here for the physical world and we have a spirit inside of us. So, and something that I just thought of by saying that is like, we're engaging in spiritual warfare all the time. And Jesus is interceding on our behalf. We're fighting with demons who are, trying to get us to sin and, turn on God. And so we're in that battle. We just don't realize it. and it's because it's hidden from us. And so that's something that, you have to be aware of as you go through things, and just say, oh, the flesh is asking me to do this right now, or the flesh, is putting this desire in front of me. And it's a constant battle for your soul in that way, right? And the other thing, besides Jesus, having already won, hell, definition of hell is that we're apart from God, right? And that's absolutely even more terrifying. Can you think about that, like, for a second? It's right now we live in a world where good has already triumphed over evil. Even though we live in a fallen world, a broken world, God has already triumphed over the devil. And so when you go to hell, you are completely removed from that positive force having triumphed, and it's gone in your life, and you're now surrounded by the evil forever with no good intervention. Like, that sounds completely terrifying to me. And that was the thing that really, like, messed me last night, is not this story. It started the clock, the gears turning in my head, but then realizing that, like, hell is a place where good is not in anymore, and you're there for eternity being tortured by whatever the demons and the devil want to torture you with. And it's just, that's a terrifying thought, and you think about, we read through end times, we read through Revelation and things like that, and to be honest with you, some of the stuff of heaven sounds kind of boring. Just like, oh, we're going to be there and we're going to praise God and sing to him pretty much 24 hours a day, which, it's not all the time, every time, right? But sometimes I'm just like, do I really want to do that for eternity? And then, obviously, yes, you do is the answer. But that's like the flesh side of me just being like, oh, that sounds kind of boring. I wish I could just go over here and do this instead, right? And it's like, no, that would be fulfilling. That would be you actually being in the presence of God, which is like the most amazing thing you could ever think of. And the opposing thought is, of course, like I said, being completely apart from God, not even having a chance to be with God anymore, and having that, just demon and devil influence all around you all the time. So that was a really terrifying thought for me, and very sobering to think about. And thankfully, I feel like I'm on the right track for that. And from what, we've been told, the Bible tells us, what Jesus tells us, I'm saved and going to heaven. But just the thought of, that possibility is still like, wow, definitely don't want to walk in that direction. So that's what I had to tell you guys today. And hopefully, within the next couple times that I'm talking to you, I have some sort of treadmill that I'm walking on, and that will bring its own set of issues, right? Because I'm going to be hopefully not out of breath while I'm talking to you guys, which I shouldn't be, but I'm not in the habit of talking while walking. But you can build up, right? That's what the body's good for. And I'm also going to have to raise my desk up. I might steal my wife's desk because she's not really using it right now, and she's gotten one of those automatic desks as opposed to this one. I'd have to readjust the legs every time I either want to use the treadmill or the chair. Which I don't anticipate wanting to use the chair a whole lot after I get the treadmill, but you never know, right? Sometimes you get bored and you want to play games or something like that, and you're just like, I just want to sit down. So we'll see how it all ends up, but a lot of adjustments need to be made here, and I'm willing to commit to this, and hopefully it'll work out. So that's it. Let's go into Mark 8, where Jesus feeds the 4,000. But before we do, let's go ahead and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, oh Lord, we are so grateful for you. You are the creator of the heavens and the earth, Lord. You are worthy of all praise. And we are just so in awe of you. We're just so grateful that you have already triumphed over evil, and that you are here holding evil at bay, keeping us safe, Lord, and that you have extended your olive branch back to us in the form of your Son who died on the cross for our sins, Lord, and to allow us to come back to you. We're so thankful that you've given us that chance at heaven, at eternity with you. Lord, we ask that you open our hearts and our minds as we read through your word here, that it makes a change in our hearts, and that you conform us to the image of your Son. Lord, speak through me with the Holy Spirit, and give us your strength this day. In Jesus' righteous holy name, amen. Okay, Jesus feeds the 4,000. Excuse me. During those days, another large crowd gathered. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. His disciples answered, But where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people, and they did so. They had a few small fish as well. He gave them thanks for them also, and told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. About 4,000 were present. After he had sent them away, he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. To test him, they asked him for a sign from heaven. He sighed deeply and said, Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to it. Then he left them, got back into the boat, and crossed to the other side. The yeast of the Pharisees and Herod. The disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for 1 loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed this with one another and said, It is because we have no bread. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember, when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They answered, 7. He said to them, Do you still not understand? Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, Do you see anything? He looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking around. Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then the eyes were open, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, Don't even go into the village. Peter declares that Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, Who do people say I am? They replied, Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets. But what about you? He asked, Who do you say I am? Peter answered, You are the Messiah. Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. Jesus predicts his death, and then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Get behind me, Satan, he said. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. The way of the cross. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. All right, the word of the Lord. Praise be to God. Here we go. Jesus feeds the 4,000. So just literally last chapter, we had them feed the 5,000. Disciples still don't get it. It's the next chapter. Come on, guys. This is possibly, a couple months different in time. But you wouldn't think that you would forget that kind of thing. It's like, wait a second. We had 5 loaves and 2 fish, and we fed 5,000 men, not including women and children. And we picked up 12 basketfuls. Okay. And then here we do it again. Are they too scared to ask Jesus, hey, can you do this again? Or did they forget? Are they like, oh, that's right, you did do that? Which it kind of sounds like by their discourse, that's what happened. Or did they just not believe? And they're just like, hey, those people just weren't hungry and these people really are? I don't know. Obviously, we weren't there, but like I said, what it sounds by the discourse is that they had forgotten. A wild thought to think that you're in Jesus's presence and that you forgot, right? But at this point, the New Testament was not written; they were living it, and I think that there's definitely some part of us deep down that would also be the same way. I've been saying this is like I see myself in these people, and it's not just a historical book; it's the truth. So Jesus has compassion for the people. He's like, they've already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. I think this is good for us to pull out as well. Like I said, this is a template for us to live by. These 4 gospels, we need to internalize these and allow it to change our hearts so that we're different, right? If we start to do this for each other, to have compassion on each other and to provide for each other's needs, all of a sudden, a lot of issues go away. I've been trying to do this in my personal life with my family, just be a better husband, be a better father, provide for their needs, see something that needs to be done, do it for them, and not just say, okay, these are my things, and, just like a robot go through them, but, see somebody who needs something and give it to them. I think that as Christians, we're really called to do that. And so, easier said than done a lot of the time. I am guilty of it. I see somebody on the side of the road, especially these days, it's, getting even harder and harder. And, I'll pass them by. And in my head, a lot of times I'll think, oh, well, somebody else will, do something for them, or, there's other Christians out there who can help them. And, maybe I'll help them next time, or, when I have a job, or all that kind of stuff. And really, the Bible actually condemns that. And so I need to be better about that. And it's tough because it's like a lot of times you'll see 3 or 4 on your trip to the store and you're like, I don't know what to do about this, and just generosity is an important thing to build into your life. And I'm saying this to you guys, but honestly, it's more me talking to myself here. It's a lot of times it's proven that the more generous you are, the more you get back when it's with God. I've had multiple stories that I've talked to people where let's say they were, really struggling financially, and they were in church and they started giving more to the collection plate, for example. And Jesus was, or God was more generous with them back. And that's not to say, prosperity gospel is good, or is true, or anything like that. But God finds ways to give you gifts, and so I think it's important for us to be generous, because the truth is, like, everything we have is His anyway. And so, once we start treating it like that, and treating it with that generosity and respect that's His, it becomes a lot easier to part with things and, to help others out. So I think this is important. I think we need to internalize this. I think that, I'm very much at fault for doing this, and I need to be much better about it. So His disciples answered, "Where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them?" Jesus answers, "How many loaves do you have?" And they have 7 loaves for 4,000 people. So tells them to sit down again, breaks them, gives them to the disciples to distribute to the people, and they did so. How many of you think that it's possible to do something like this? Has anybody ever tried to perform a miracle? That's my question, because this is something, and this is, not a rhetorical question, it's an honest question, but I am not expecting anyone to say yes to this, to be honest with you. I mean, like I've talked about before, it's not often that we see miracles in this life, but also I think that a lot of people, may be afraid to do that, and myself definitely included. I've thought about it in the past, and I was like, you know what, with God, anything is possible. We can pray about this, hands on somebody, heal them, etc. You need faith, though, right? This is something where I'd be like, okay, I'm breaking the bread. I'm going to pray to God. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's no way this works. 7 loaves for 4,000 people. Right. And so having that faith is kind of, it's a gift from God, number one, but it's a step, that you need to take. And it's a difficult one to take. But I think that we can kind of go about it incrementally, maybe. I've talked about briefly in the past that I have given the financial facet of my life to God. And that was kind of my first incremental step. I was driving home from work one day and I was, this was like early 20s. And I was, in a rough financial situation. I had a lot of credit card debt, I think. And I was working, but I wasn't making a ton of money. And I was just like, God, I'm fried, right? I don't want to think about this. I don't want to stress about this. I don't want to worry about this anymore. I am giving this to you. And I just stopped worrying about it. And to this day, I have not had a problem paying a bill. Now, things have been really tight. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like swimming in money or anything like that. But God has provided, and because I've allowed him to provide, I haven't tried to take it on myself as an American and say, oh, if I work hard, I'll have, plenty and blah, 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 right? It's giving that to him and allowing him to do that. And so that's something actually I'm recalling now that I don't have a job. I really need to lean further into that and just be like, God, I trust you here. I don't see any sort of employment on the horizon, unfortunately. And, the bills are piling up and, I have a family now to feed and just really, putting that on him and just saying, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to stress about it. That's not going to help at all anyway. And just allowing God to do that. And so I think if we take those steps in our faith, we're able to build that kind of thing. And then at some point, we'll be able to produce miracles like this. I believe that we can. I believe that we're able to. It's just all about our closeness with God and our faith. And so I think that, obviously Jesus had perfect faith. He was God, so he was, knew he was able to do this. But I think with God, we can also have that kind of, what's the word? Why am I blanking on this word? Idea of what it's going to happen, or just knowing that it will happen with God. So confidence. Why did I blank on confidence? You always get it after the fact. Anyways, they still picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over on, what was it? 7 loaves? Yeah. 7 loaves for 4,000. They picked up 7 basketfuls. Just absolutely crazy. So after he sent all the people away, after they had eaten, he's like, okay, you got enough strength for the road. Go ahead. I'm going to go on to Dalmanutha. Sorry for mispronouncing that before. That's, been a while since I've seen that word. Pharisees came and began to ask questions to Jesus. They test him again, right? And we've heard this in Matthew. And Mark is definitely a lot more about the idea as opposed to the specifics. He's not super detailed like Matthew was. So, Matthew is saying, why does this wicked and perverse generation ask for a sign? No sign will be given it except for, Jonah. Because like he was in the belly of the beast, the Son of Man will be in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, etc. Right? Mark's just like, why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given to it. And then goes. So, he gets back into the boat and crosses to the other side, right? They're always there. The Pharisees, they're just like jackals. They're always around. They're hyenas. They're always looking for something. They're picking, they're pecking, they're poking and prodding. There's a lot of P words I just pulled out. Why can't I think of confidence when I need to? Anyways, the yeast of the Pharisees and Herod. Now, this is interesting to me that Mark adds on Herod here, because originally it was just the Pharisees, or at least in Matthew, it's just the Pharisees. But like we said, Mark here is writing for a different people, right? He's writing for a different audience than Matthew was. Matthew was for the Jewish audience. Mark was for more of a Roman audience. And so, knowing that not only the Pharisees and the king is a little different for them, I think provides a little more context and a little bit more weight behind it, we'll say. They discuss this with one another and says, it's because we have no bread, right? The disciples just don't get it, and they live with Jesus. So I think, we can have a little bit of, leeway or rope per se, if we don't just like jump in right away with our faith. I mean, some people certainly have that gift and they're able to do that. Some of us a little more skeptical with God. And, if it takes people who lived with literal God this long to believe that he's God and understand that, we can be forgiven if, it takes us a little bit as well. Jesus says that blessed is he who has seen, and believed, but blessed more is he who has not seen and believed, right? And that's us. And thankfully we have the book and we have this all recorded that we can believe, but like you said, we can't see, we can't touch like the disciples could. And so, we have to use faith, and that's how we grow our faith. Aware of the discussion, Jesus asked them, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" This actually made me laugh while I was reading, because they answered 12, and they're just like, 12? This feels like a teacher, talking to like young children. And truthfully, that's actually what it is, but it's just funny that, he's like, "Don't you remember? We just did this. I had 5,000 people that we fed with, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and you still picked up 12 basketfuls." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then he's like, "This just happened, right? When I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces do you pick up?" 7. He's like, "Do you still not understand? Guys, come on. Like, I've been telling you and I've been showing you. What else do you need, right?" But hearts are hard. Humans are humans, and it takes a while. So Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida, right? And this is another interesting thing that I was talking about yesterday. Jesus uses spit sometimes in order to heal people. And for this particular one, he does with the man's eyes and heals him from blindness. Interesting that this one went in phases, I guess is the best word, that he was healed a little bit, right? And he looks around and he's like, "Oh, they look like trees walking around." And Jesus does it again. That's not because Jesus didn't have the power to heal him in one go. I have to think that this guy specifically didn't necessarily have the full faith. And he was like, "I'm not really sure if Jesus can do this." And then Jesus does it. And he was like, "Wait, I can see. It's not fully there, but I can see," right? And a lot of times Jesus will say, "Let it be done as you believe," right? Or the faith that you have. And so this guy may have come to Jesus and said, "Oh, I kind of believe that you can do this. I've heard about you, that you do stuff like this. Can you heal me? I'm not sure, maybe." In his mind, that's what he's thinking, right? And so, he gets halfway healed, and then, he's like, "Oh, okay, maybe he can do this," and has more faith, and then, he gets fully healed. And again, we see that Jesus tells him, "Don't go into the city. Don't tell anybody about this. Don't even go to the village," right? Or don't tell anybody in the village, and sends him home. And did that guy listen? We don't know in Mark, but unlikely. Probably he went out and told everybody. It's typical for these people. But I would have done the same thing, I'm sure. Right? "Oh my God, Jesus, blah, he healed my sight. I can see now." That's a hard thing to hide for sure. Peter declares that Jesus is the Messiah. All right, so they went to Caesarea Philippi, Caesarea, which obviously denotes a Roman town, it's Caesar's. And on the way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." That's all from Matthew. It's just a little condensed here, right? "But what about you?" he asked. "What do you say I am?" Or who do you say I am? Sorry. Peter answers, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus says, "Don't tell anybody." All right. Why would he say that? That's interesting. Why is he always saying, "Don't tell anybody"? Well, we've kind of touched on this before, but the answer is it's not his appointed time. Right? He knows as soon as he comes out and says, "I am the Messiah," in public, the chief priests and teachers of the law will take him and arrest him, and his time will be over, right? Excuse me. They're constantly just looking for a way to arrest him and kill him. So that's number one. Number two, he needs to be able to move around to different places. And if he has too many people following him, then he won't be able to reach as many people, right? And so, unfortunate truth of the situation is like he can't just have so many people that he can't move. And there are some stories where he does have that many people where it's just literally difficult to move. And thankfully he's able to go, send them away and go to a different region, etc. But that is what would happen if the word really got out to everybody. Like at the end, when he's on his procession on the donkey in the way for the Passover meal to Jerusalem, and the people all know at that point, right? And so that is basically the perfect timing. Is he's finally got the word out to everybody, and they can all come together. But that's the reason why he's telling people not to tell anyone that he's the Messiah. Jesus predicts his death, right? We know about this. Peter begins to rebuke him, and Jesus, can you imagine? Like, you're living with Jesus, right? You're the mouthpiece of the disciples. You love this guy. He's your teacher. He called you. You went out 2 by 2, reached the different, regions of Israel, came back. You guys are hanging out. You're living together. This is like a year and a quarter in. And this guy, your teacher's all of a sudden, he's like, okay, well, you guys need to know that I'm going to be put to death here pretty soon. And Peter, obviously, you can imagine yourself, just be like, no, I don't agree with that. I don't like that. And then you say, Jesus, that's never going to happen, right? You're going to march up to Jerusalem, blah, blah. And he turns around, looks at you. He's like, get behind me, Satan. You'd be like, whoops, sorry? Am I Satan right now? I didn't know that. But, Jesus explains, you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. And it's true, right? Peter was thinking that, the Messiah was a different person. He didn't quite understand yet. It takes Peter after Jesus dies for him to actually understand and to change. He, like most people, was thinking that the Messiah would be a militaristic king, whereas his kingdom is of a different world. Okay, so the way of the cross. Then he called the crowd to him along with the disciples and says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. That's something that we've talked about, is a daily you need to do this, right? This is basically saying every day is a new day, and your job is to pick up your cross and to deny your flesh and to follow Christ. Be molded in the image of him, and try to stay away from the sins that your body and your mind is calling you to do. Now, will we fail at this? Yes, absolutely, we do. I've already done it probably about 30 times today, and it's only 10:30 in the morning, right? It happens. We do it every day. That's not the point. The point is that we need to strive to be more like Christ every single day. And it's a battle. It's a war. It wears on you. And the only way that you're successful is calling on Jesus for his strength. Right? So it's really important for us to do that. And that's what, picking up our cross and following Christ really means. It's a daily battle. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and the gospel will save it. I've been thinking about this lately. It's a difficult spot to not have work, especially in this economy. Things seem good, kind of, but, there's a lot of people who understand that it's not as good as it looks. It looks good from the outside, but it's kind of built on a house of cards. Brain's not working. But it's just, I'm like, should I just forgo all that and just go all in on, following God? And I'm not sure at this point what else I need to do at that, should I go down on the highway and start holding up signs or whatever? I'm not sure what I would do, to further follow God at this point, but I'm thinking in terms of like Paul, who had his experience with Christ and was completely transformed. It was 180. He's a different person. And he lived his life according to that after that. He worked for a living. He was a tent maker. He was able to provide for himself on the road, but truthfully, he was, within his right to accept money and support from the churches that he had, planted and stuff like that. So I just wonder what that would look like at this point. I'm like, if I just was to not worry about anything. The problem is that I have a family now, and that's something that Jesus says basically when he talks about marriage, and he's like, for those who can and decide to stay single, that's better if you can, but it's okay to marry. It's not bad to marry. It's just that men, they start to think about the concerns of their wives, and wives can, think about the concerns of their husband as opposed to thinking about, what God wants. And I see that now, as a single man, I was like, nah, I can still put God first, but I'm tied down by my family, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's bad at all. I love, love, love being with my family. It's just, I can't now go out and go wherever I want and start preaching, etc. Right? Which is not what I necessarily wanted to do until recently anyway. But just thinking about those kinds of things and like, what more can I do for God? And this is obviously a great compromise because I'm able to do it at home. It's on a schedule. I'm able to reach a lot of people with it. So I'm very grateful for this, and maybe there's, other ways I can do that. So if you got any suggestions, throw them in there. I really, I would appreciate that. And yeah, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? You hear a lot about signing a contract with the devil, right? So obviously we're willing to give our soul for something, or these people who do that would be willing to give their soul for something. But, soul is much more valuable. Like you're on the scales like this, and you think, oh, I want money here and fame and all this kind of stuff, and here I'll give you my soul for that. It's like, this is not an even trade at all. This stuff perishes when you perish. The soul is forever. Not a good trade, right? What can anyone exchange for their soul? If anyone's ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. Right? This is kind of what I led with today with that short, with that guy saying 1134 and how he saw, that everywhere, and it really means hell, and he saw Jesus in a dream, etc. Yeah, that's, you need to be willing to act on your faith as well, right? Faith without deeds is dead, as John says. And while we're not saved by deeds, it's a good sign of a active and living faith. And my brain's working, I promise, but not quite fast enough at this point, I think. So anyways, yeah, that was a good episode. I really appreciate you guys joining me here. Hopefully, we had something good to talk about. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you had something that, makes you think. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I would really appreciate, you sending a comment my way or asking a question or whatever it may be. And we'll just start some conversations and build relationships, and looking forward to more of that. Hopefully, we're reaching people here, and that's kind of the purpose of all this. So yeah, this has been another episode of Reading Through the Bible. My name is Carl. We'll be here at 10 a.m. Central tomorrow, which is the end of the week. Crazy how fast that goes. And I look forward to reading through Mark 9 with you guys. So yes, we will see you tomorrow, and thank you for being here with me. All right, take care.